Ow, 17 August is coming. And if you're not ready, it could be the day that destroys you or the day that makes you unstoppable. Ladies and gentlemen, stop scrolling. This is your moment. Every second you wait, your dreams slip away. New video just dropped with Tony Evans, and it's the wake up call you've been waiting for. Tap, numbo, feel the energy, and unleash the giant within. A 17th August isn't just a date on a calendar. It's the kind of day that burns itself into your memory, the kind of day you feel in your bones. It's when you wake up and realize the life you've been living isn't the life you were meant to live. The air feels heavier, the clock ticks louder, and everything around you seems to be asking the same silent question: how much longer will you keep pretending? This is when you feel that quiet discomfort inside you swell into something that can no longer be ignored. The routines you once clung to start to feel like chains, and the conversations you have feel scripted, stale, and empty. You look at yourself in the mirror and notice a flicker in your eyes, a flicker that wants more, that refuses to be smothered any longer. And deep down, you know this isn't a random day. This is a crossroad. A dangerous day isn't always marked by chaos or disaster. It's marked by clarity. It's when you suddenly see things exactly as they are, without the filters you've used to soften the truth. You start realizing the promises you made to yourself but never kept. The dreams you buried to keep others comfortable rise back to the surface, uninvited and unrelenting. The job you've been tolerating, the habits you've been justifying, the relationships you've been settling for, they all stand before you stripped of excuses. It's not that they suddenly changed, it's that you finally stopped lying to yourself about them. And that's the danger. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. The mind begins to rebel against the safety of the familiar, pushing you toward the unknown, even though the unknown terrifies you. You start questioning the decisions you've made, the paths you've taken, and the reasons you've stayed where you are. You notice how many of your choices were born from fear instead of courage, from convenience instead of conviction. This isn't a comfortable realization, it's a dangerous one. Because the moment you realize you've been living beneath your potential, the status quo can no longer hold you. Every fiber of your being starts to resist the slow death of complacency. You become restless, agitated, unwilling to settle for the crumbs when you know a feast is possible. And yet, the danger doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from within. It comes from the war between the version of you that's comfortable and the version of you that's capable. One whispers that change is risky, that you might fail, that you could lose what little security you have. The other shouts that staying the same will cost you far more in the long run. This inner conflict is where the battle truly begins. You're standing in a space where you can no longer retreat to the safety of ignorance, but stepping forward means facing every fear you've ever tried to outrun. That's why this day is dangerous. It demands you choose, and it demands it now. This is not the kind of day you glide through half asleep, moving from one distraction to the next. This is the day that grabs you by the shoulders and forces you to look at the life you've built without blinking. It doesn't whisper politely. It slams into your chest with the urgency of a wake, up call you can't snooze. Every sound feels sharper, every thought feels heavier, because you know this isn't just another cycle of hours passing by. Something is demanding a response, and deep down, you feel that ignoring it will cost you more than you're willing to pay. You can't scroll past it, you can't talk your way around it, and you can't hide under the illusion that there's more time. You're being called to step up, to make a decision, to stop rehearsing a life you never actually live. It's easy to treat days like this as coincidences, to dismiss the pull in your chest as random emotion. But the truth is, these moments have been building for a long time. Every compromise you made, every time you played small to avoid judgment, every time you told yourself, not yet, they've all been adding weight to this moment. And now that weight has reached the breaking point, it's no longer about whether you feel ready. It's about whether you're willing to step into the uncertainty, willing to lose the comfort that's been quietly suffocating you, willing to become someone who lives with intention instead of drift. Because if you won't make the choice, life will make it for you, and it will be far less gentle than you hope. This is the danger of a day like this. It leaves no room for hiding. You can distract yourself with business. You can numb yourself with routine, but the truth keeps finding cracks in your defenses. You'll notice it in the quiet moments, in the way your stomach knots when you think about where you're headed, in the way you hesitate before giving the same tired answer when someone asks how you're doing. You can feel the tension between the life you have and the life you want. And that tension is a sign that change is not just possible, it's necessary. The longer you ignore it, the more restless you'll become, and the more you'll feel like you're running out of air in a room that once felt safe. And so this day stands in front of you like a crossroads. Not the kind you casually stroll past, but the kind you know will mark you forever depending on which way you go. On one side, there's the familiar, predictable, controlled, and slowly draining you. On the other side, there's uncertainty, messy, unpredictable, and alive. Choosing the familiar feels easier in the moment, but it's a slow surrender to a life you no longer believe in. Choosing the uncertain feels terrifying, but it's the only path that leads somewhere new. The question is no longer whether you have the time, it's whether you have the courage to respond before the chance disappears. Dangerous days have a way of disguising themselves as endings, when in reality, they are the birth of something entirely new. You feel the weight pressing in, the pressure building until you're convinced you can't take another step. It's the kind of heaviness that makes you question if you've reached the end of your strength, if you've already given all you can give, but that same pressure that feels like it's crushing you is also shaping you, forcing you to shed what no longer belongs in your life. Pain becomes a signal pointing you toward the places where growth is demanding to happen. Fear sharpens your senses, pulling your attention away from the noise and onto what really matters. And in that moment, what felt like collapse becomes the beginning of a rise you didn't see coming. The breaking point is not a sign of weakness. It's proof that you've reached the threshold where the old version of you can no longer survive. That version was built to fit within certain limits, to navigate the life you've been living up until now. But when life stretches you beyond those limits, that version has to die so a stronger one can emerge. You may feel like you're falling apart, but in reality, you're being rebuilt. Every frustration, every setback, every closed door is dismantling the parts of you that were never meant to last. It's not about erasing who you were. It's about releasing the parts of you that kept you from who you're becoming. The breaking is uncomfortable, but it's also the most honest work you'll ever do. In these moments, it's tempting to cling to the familiar, even if it's what's breaking you. You might want to hold on to routines, people, or habits just to have something solid beneath your feet. But the truth is, you can't walk into your new life carrying the baggage of the old one. This is the part where you learn that letting go is not the same as losing. It's making room for what you've been waiting for all along. And yes, the process feels like loss because it strips away what you've known, leaving you exposed and vulnerable. But that rawness is where new strength is born. You can't build unshakable courage in comfort. You can't discover the depth of your resilience without first being pushed to your edge. And somewhere in the middle of all this, you realize the breaking point has quietly shifted into a birth point. You find yourself making choices you never thought you could make, saying no to what drains you and yes to what calls you forward. The fear that once paralyzed you now fuels you because you've seen what you can endure and you know you can handle more. This is the day when you stop being defined by what happened to you and start being defined by how you rise from it. The moment you decide to embrace the breaking is the moment you begin to step into the version of yourself that cannot be stopped. A dangerous day has a way of pulling you into the mirror and forcing you to see yourself without the masks you've worn for years. It's the day you stop living by accident. drifting through the hours without asking if they're building the life you want. You begin to notice the subtle ways you've been shaped by the opinions of others, the quiet compromises you've made to fit into spaces never meant for you. The world might tell you to be realistic, to play it safe, to blend in, but something inside you starts to rebel against that script. You can't unhear the voice urging you to take ownership of your life, to step out from the shadow of expectations. This is when you realize that your identity is not a reflection of what people see, but of what you decide to become. And that decision is yours alone. Standing in that realization is both liberating and terrifying. On one hand, you feel a rush of power, knowing you are no longer waiting for permission to live your truth. On the other hand, you feel the weight of responsibility pressing in, reminding you that you can no longer blame circumstances or other people for where you are. Every choice becomes sharper, every action more deliberate, because you see how easily days can slip by when you're not paying attention. You start cutting away the things that keep you small, habits that waste your energy, environments that drain your spirit, relationships that pull you away from who you want to be. The process isn't neat and it's not painless, but it is necessary. This is the moment where purpose replaces autopilot. You stop measuring your life by how much you've avoided discomfort and start measuring it by how deeply you've engaged with it. You begin to value the struggle because it means you're building something real. You stop chasing validation from people who don't understand your path, and you start seeking alignment with the values you refuse to compromise. There's a shift inside you where clarity sharpens, and the noise of the world starts to fade. What once seemed impossible now feels inevitable because you're no longer waiting for the perfect time. You're creating it. You're not following a path handed to you. You're carving your own, one bold step at a time. And so this day becomes the turning point, not because the date itself holds power, but because you finally choose to own it. You claim your decisions, your mistakes, your growth, and your victories. You understand that life will not pause to wait for your readiness. It will keep moving, and it's up to you to keep pace with it. You embrace the truth that living on purpose means embracing risk, facing fear, and stepping into spaces where you might fail but will always grow. The most dangerous day is also the most powerful one because it's the day you decide who you are, and from that moment forward, nothing in your life can stay the same.